What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. This is The Deep Corner, presented by the Volleyball League of America, episode 37. And a very special guest, our friend from north of the border. He is Volleyball Source all over the internet, volleyballsource.ca, at Volleyball Source on Instagram, all 14,000 of his followers. Mr. Everett Delorme, welcome to the show.
What's up, dude? How's it going? I don't know if I would call myself a very special guest.
Yes, you are.
I'm a guest, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So we've been talking all day, watching some ball online. So it's been good so far.
We have. It's been a lot of fun just watching 3 different countries worth of matches on a Saturday. It's been a great time. This man knows a lot about volleyball. Goes all across the Canadian volleyball universe, and there's a lot to talk about comparing U.S. to Canada and thinking about how professional North American men's volleyball might work. So I'm excited to pick your brain about all that. So first of all, this is a weird year. This is a really weird year for volleyball. Lots of hits have been taken globally, the volleyball community, top to bottom. How's Canada doing? What's Canada up to this year volleyball-wise?
We got absolutely nothing going on. None of the leagues have been in operation from essentially university, college, down through club. There's nothing going on. I'm not even sure if adult leagues have been going. We're currently experiencing, I guess you could say, a second lockdown. It's not as intense as the first one. Let's say, much more people are still out in the streets and everyone's just wearing masks and stuff like that. But yeah, all of the leagues have been canceled for the entirety of the year. And nothing's going on. It sucks. It's a shame. But at the same time, everyone's kind of in the same boat, and it's not really a situation where you're looking over at your friends and at another, province or something and looking like, they're getting to play over there because everyone's shut down. Mm-hmm. As of now, I'm not sure if Volleyball Canada has canceled the national championships at the club level, but I'm assuming they will. There's nothing really going on.
There's
Volleyball
nothing.
is pretty much dead.
That sucks. And yeah, in the U.S. it was very similar. We had this big magical schedule planned for the VLA this past year that all got canceled, and we were lucky to get the one July event in when we did. Similar deal sounds like what's going on up there with you guys right now. I don't know what our national teams are doing, if any of the guys are in the gym who are stateside. The European leagues are functioning somewhat normally, which is really good news. We've got a little bit to watch over there. But one thing that I'm really going to miss this year that I really just started to get on my radar is Canadian U Sports men's volleyball. Canada being really the only other place in the world other than the U.S. that has intercollegiate volleyball or university volleyball as part of the player development process. Really, that is a pretty uniquely American thing that is shared with U Sports, and that's the path that players go to get to the national team. And the U Sports teams, that Trinity Western team from last year, absolutely blew me away with the level of play that they showed in that whole championship run. Dude, that was some seriously good volleyball. So hearing that U Sports canceled really sucks, but there's a lot I want to talk about that, because I don't think U Sports wasn't even on my radar until a year or two ago. And I think the average American volleyball fan doesn't really know that there's such a competitive university circuit north of the border. So talk to me a little bit about U Sports. What's from your perspective, what's similar to the NCAA? What's different from the NCAA? And just kind of how they run, how the volleyball is. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first and foremost, I think I want to say that I think really the U Sports benefits from the fact that NCAA is so under delivered in terms of men's volleyball. It's the least supported sport in the entire NCAA is men's volleyball, and because of the limit of scholarships that are available, it's not really a serious path for athletes to go down to play in the States. Mm-hmm. And most of our top guys, we were just watching Eric Lepke. That's a Trinity guy.
Yep.
So most of our top guys stay in Canada. And I mean, I can only think of a handful of guys talking about Alex Ncaa at UCI, Justin Louis at Stanford,
Dane and Gemma,
Alex Murray. Yeah, obviously Danon Ujima and Cole Ketrazinski at UCLA, and then there's Alex Merkai too at Princeton. But other than that, like the majority of guys stay in Canada.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, we've been able to really create a really strong ecosystem within our own U Sports League. And not many people know this, but you talk about Trinity Western, and over the past decade, they've created more professional international volleyball players than any other North American program. Right, more so than UCLA, more so than USC, more so than all of these programs.
I did not know that. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and realistically, like you saw them last year at the Can-Am Holiday Showcase, and basically when I was talking to American coaches or the guys there, they're like, "Man, who is this Trinity Western?" And like all our Canadian guys have kind of just been like, "Yeah, that's what we've seen."
Uh-huh.
I mean, you go back to 2012, which a lot of people, when you talk about Trinity Western like championships, like they've won a lot, but what would have been last year's team, the 2020 team and the 2012 team, like those two teams would have been like two of the best U Sport teams of all time. Like that team went to the World Club Championships and won a game against the team from Iran.
Really? I did not know.
Yeah.
Like in 2012, the FIVB let them do that?
So this was actually
team. Wow.
Yeah. So in the 2011 World Club Championships, it was the North American representative it was Canada's turn, because obviously we don't have anything. So Ncaa just like rotates. So it was Canada's turn. So we just sent Trinity Western, who was our team, and they are obviously like were willing to pay some stuff like that. But yeah, they actually ended up winning a match. Wow. And I mean that team, and a lot of it, you're talking about like Lucas Van Berkel, Dan Jansen, Van Dorn, Steven Marshall, Rudy Verhoof, like all guys who are a super big core of our national team forward. But yeah, like the level of play that we've seen from U Sports in the past decade, the increase of level of play has been phenomenal. And the guys coming out have been phenomenal. I mean, just yesterday we had Stephen Maher, who has now been the first Canadian to surpass 1,000 points in the Superliga,
which is a big deal.
Huge deal, right? I mean, and up until him, it was 2016 that he ended his career at McMaster University. 2007, like that 2016-17 season was his first year at Padova, and first of all, it was unheard of for a Canadian to go straight to the Italian league. Like it was very unheard of for Canadians in general just to be in the Italian league. We had a few guys here and there that played, but never on, either big teams, and never were top scorers. Well, Stephen Maher, as a rookie, goes to the Superliga and is 10th in scoring in his first year of play in the Superliga, and that just didn't happen before then, and that just kind of opened the floodgates. And I mean, I talk about when I first started working at Volleyball Canada back in 2011, and I'm following international players, and we've got maybe 10 to 12 dudes playing internationally. And I mean, up at one point in 2018, we had over 100. Wow. So you're just seeing, the increase of guys coming from Canada has been massive. So, you going back to the U Sports thing, when you look at the 20 athletes that represented Canada in the sport of volleyball, both in indoor and beach, in the 2016 Olympics, 18 of the 20 athletes came from Canadian sport programs.
Okay.
And now that is a huge deal, because if you look at any other sport at the Olympics, if you look at athletics or swimming or soccer or basketball, all of our best athletes go down to the States, understandably so, because of how good the NCAA system is and how much money there is. You can't get a full ride scholarship athletically to play sports at a university in Canada. And also, you're very much a student athlete in Canada.
Yeah.
Like it's not, there's not this full ride mentality as much. So having that many homebred athletes has been a huge deal. And it's really because our U Sports programs have been able to keep everyone at home, and we've been able to work everything within our own system.
That is awesome. And that answers a lot of questions I have about kind of Canadian volleyball growth over the past, decade. And I want to get to that in a little bit at the national team level. But real quick, you mentioned the Can-Am Showcase. So that was an event that was played about a year ago now, at the very end of 2019. It was like a preseason event for some NCAA teams and kind of a mid-season event for some U Sports teams. So From Canada, Trinity Western, McMaster, Alberta, and Ryerson were your four, right? And
Yeah.
from the states, we had Long Beach State a year after their like back-to-back national championships. You had Ohio State, you had UCLA, and Lewis. So those 8 teams got together and played a tournament at the very, very end of 2019. And it was kind of an unprecedented thing, comparing directly on the court against one another, U Sports to NCAA. And I watched a bunch of those matches. I watched pretty much all of them because I was so fascinated by it. You were there. And now, to disclaim it a little bit, to give my American teams a little bit of a break, it was preseason for them. It was really their first competition. They were not in top form yet. It was a different volleyball, which makes a little bit of a difference. We play with the Molten, and you play with the Ncaa like we do in the VLA and most of the places internationally. But like it's very difficult to normalize like levels of play across different leagues, different places in the world, like to figure out how a player coming out of the NCAA is going to fit in Italy or Russia or Poland or France or wherever. It's very difficult to do that. So literally putting those two leagues on the same floor in the same gym was a cool thing that had never been done before. So you were there. What are some of your takeaways from that event? Say what you will about like where it was in the 2 seasons of the respective leagues, but what were some big takeaways from seeing the U Sports teams compete against the NCAA?
Yeah. So as for the Can-Am tournament, it was, I mean, in Canada, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it, but having American teams come for preseason isn't a new thing. It's a rarer thing, but I mean, the past 3 or 4 or maybe even more years, either Ohio State or Long Beach State has come in to play McMaster.
I remember Ohio State did that during their championship run, like in their preseason thing too.
It was actually a bit of a thing. I think there was 3 or 4 years there where it was kind of a rite of passage for the eventual NCAA champion to lose to McMaster in the preseason. It happened definitely 3 years in a row with Ohio State and Long Beach State, where they would come up to McMaster, get their lose to McMaster, and then go on and use that galvanizing experience to win the NCAA. And I think these type of exchanges happen pretty frequently. I know Alberta goes down usually at Christmas time. UBC went to Hawaii. Like these exchanges happen, especially more and more often. And this tournament was actually based off a tournament that used to happen in Alberta, at the University of Alberta. But because of the new rules and the way matches are played, it had to kind of end. And luckily, there's a pair of brothers by the name of Daniel and Ellie Shermer who kind of put it all together. They're also Kofi's music producers, so that's just how they have the tie-in
awesome.
with the they manage Kofi, so that's how they had the tie-in with some of the American schools and then all of the Canadian schools too. And personally, I loved it. I got to commentate a bunch of the matches, and I got to film them too. And I think what I really enjoyed is that we had like Ryerson, who's not a top 10 school, I would say, beat UCLA, and it really showed us like the worst team showing that we had was Mac, who didn't win a game, which was so very surprising for me. But I think we just showed, especially to an international audience, that U Sports volleyball is very, very good.
Yeah.
And it is just as good and just as quality as the NCAA. And I mean, one thing I will notice too, and you may not like that, is I noticed how many of the NCAA teams were led by foreigners.
Yes.
And just looking down the lineup, and I mean, you can even look at like BYU. They've got Gardo, and they've got the
Garcia Fernandez in the Finnish middle.
Yeah, Garcia. Yeah, exactly. Same thing with Hawaii with Rado and all those guys. And whereas foreigners, there was I think 3 or 4 in total for all of the Canadian teams, and the Canadian teams were led by Canadian guys. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really where we have foreigner rules in our schools of how many foreigners you can have on your team and stuff like that. And they also pay full like foreigner fees, and those are really big here in Canada as well too. So I think that was a big thing for me in terms of like we're giving an opportunity for our own guys to get playing time, whereas it was pretty eye opening to me to see how many of the American teams were led by foreigners and their best players were foreigners and the guys who were putting the ball away were guys from elsewhere.
That's a really interesting point. So I've talked about that with a couple guys on this show over the last several months. The influx of foreigners to NCAA volleyball. First of all, I think it's a good thing because the model for developing players in Europe and elsewhere is so different that like when Davide Gardini, for example, came to BYU, that was a huge deal. The son of an Italian legend choosing to go to the U.S. for part of his like very important stages of his development as a player instead of staying and doing the standard Italian thing. That was a very big deal. Ncaa, Scherzian, who plays for one of our VLA teams, French/Polish guy who came and was player of the year at Ohio State for a few years. You're right.
Oh yeah, I know. I commentated when McMaster handed him a couple of losses. So that doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, we'll have to get them to play after their respective seasons instead of before and see how the outcomes change. But anyway, the two best teams in the NCAA this past season, right before it all got canceled in March, like you said, were Hawaii and BYU. And they played 2 matches in Hawaii right before the cancellation of everything. BYU won 1-3-0, Hawaii won the next 3-2, and like one of the best NCAA matches I've ever watched in my life. And at least half the floor of the 14 guys were foreigners. It was amazing. That is, I view it as a good thing for the NCAA. It's a sign that kids want to come to the U.S. They want to do the NCAA thing. They want to go to college, and they view it in a volleyball perspective as a positive stepping stone towards being a professional volleyball player. Now, the U.S. talent has to now catch up and send their best players to be as good as or better than those foreigners they're bringing in. I agree with that. But it's cool, and it's another way to help normalize the level of play across the world because you're getting some of these 18-year-old French, Bulgarian, Italian, Finnish, Dutch kids or whatever and bringing them to play against the 18-year-old with and against the 18-year-old Americans and seeing how it all goes. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm not saying we don't have foreigners here in Canada. I mean, certain programs thrive off of foreigners. When you're looking at Brandon, who's been in the U Sports Finals or been amongst the top teams.
Brandon was really good last year too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Brandon, you've got Robin Baghdadi, who's playing on Berlin right now. You've got a number of Australian guys as well too. And, we're starting to see a few more foreigners come in. I know that Trinity Western has bringing in a German setter and an American libero as well too.
Oh, an American. I was just about to ask about that. Like at what point do Americans start coming to really, really good youth sports programs, and like will that open floodgates of sorts? That would be really interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's still, you really have to make the choice still, unless you're going to Trinity, which has really almost created like a factory of players. You should still be going to these schools for the education. Mm-hmm. And I think, I definitely think that some of the foreigners who come here maybe that's a bit of a shock, where their expectation of a North American school experience is like, I'm coming to play volleyball, like I'm a star and stuff like that. And, it's still not, like, it's still volleyball. Like, we're still having struggle getting it, noticed, recognized here. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be a superstar on this campus, except for maybe, there's a few that where people know who you are. And if you're going a good team and making a good run, then you're going to be getting some fans as well too. But, it's still volleyball. So I think definitely for some foreigners, they think that they're going to be coming in for that like D1 athlete experience, and that it's definitely not the case. You're still expected to go to class,
right? And
you're there to be a student, but you're there to be an athlete, but you need to be a student as well.
Right. Yeah. That's unless in the NCAA, unless you're playing football or basketball, you're not getting that like magical media hyped up, like gilded over athlete experience. You're going to come and you're going to go to school, and you are also probably going to play some really good volleyball along the way. So I've been fascinated by the influx of foreigners to, I guess, both college leagues. So
Yeah, for
we
sure.
can we can we can make fun of each other all we want about which teams would win based on when they played between U Sports and NCAA or whatever. But I want to ask about the national team level. So you worked with at Volleyball Canada for years. Um,
Just a couple of years, but I've worked kind of along. I only worked for Volleyball Canada for a couple of years, but then after that, I've been obviously like tightly involved with
yeah,
the national teams and covering
alongside,
them and
and
stuff.
I think it's pretty safe to call you an insider to the national team structure for Canada. What, in your opinion, is the biggest thing or couple things about Canada's rise to like the top one or two tiers of international volleyball? They're now qualified for the second Olympics in a row. They're, I think, pretty clearly the second best team in the Norsika region. They're routinely beating teams in Europe, South America, beating good national teams, like legitimately contending at tournaments, finishing in the finals of World League, VNL, whatever. Canada is legit. They're a legit national team now. 10 years ago, that was not as much the case. What changed?
Glenn Hoag.
Yeah,
One word, Glenn Hoag,
that
100%.
that's
And
simple,
you
huh?
you ask you 100%. You ask anyone within the program, you ask anyone who knows anything about the program, any of the athletes, and they'll tell you Glenn Hoag. I mean, this man took over the program in 2007, and for a lot of different reasons, it was run down. This was also when Volleyball Canada hit financial rock bottom and were seriously in the red. That year they had to spend $50,000, I believe, per broadcast for World League to get CBC to come in, which is our national broadcaster. And,
Ouch.
a bunch of different things happened. And that was, of course, right before the recession. And, Glenn Hoag came in and, for a lot of years, like when I started really following Canadian volleyball, and that was kind of when I started getting into it. And then when I started working for Volleyball Canada, I think the national team was ranked 27th, and we were losing to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That does not happen anymore.
That doesn't happen anymore. And I mean, the first event that I was a part of was the Pan Am Cup in 2011, and we had to beat Mexico to qualify for World League qualifying. But yeah, that's how far we came from, and we even lost the first set to Mexico.
Oh,
that was the first ever national team game I ever commentated.
Cannot be losing sets to Mexico.
Yeah, no, Pedro Rangel, who's still their setter, and
I remember that
honestly,
guy.
he's hands down one of the most underrated setters in the world. Went off for like a 10-serve serving run, was just ripping them, and but Glenn Hoag came in, and I mean, he had spent years with the French program as an assistant coach there, and coaching with the French club Paris. And he came in and established everything from our full-time training center to our system to everything. Because he was from Quebec, he was managed to pull some strings and get the team funding. So I helped some team from funding with the province of Quebec and getting a full-time training center in Gatineau. And Glenn really just, he gave his salary back to the national team to invest into the team. And this was a time when they had no money. Without him, the way he has led that program, it doesn't happen. And every guy on that squad is going to say the same thing.
He's going to say the same thing, including and not limited to his son, who's also on the national team.
Oh yeah, 100%, right. And he also has another son who's had a long and very successful career, so mostly playing in Turkey. And I think that's another thing that you also should look at too, is the fact that before, it was a really big thing that if you were the head coach of the national team, much like Karch, you're the head coach of the national team and you're gonna do that and that's it. But because he was so good, he was just like, look, I'm going to be able to coach internationally. You're going to let me do that. Yeah. I'm going to give my salary back to Volleyball Canada and we're going to rebuild this thing. And that's exactly what he did.
Wow.
And it's such a trickle down effect from how we play the game too. And I remember talking to a longtime assistant coach in that program, and a guy who ran the full-time training center for a long time, Vincent Chet, who most recently spent time with the French team as well, and talked about how when the first kind of inkling that things were changing was we beat Cuba in 2010 in August, we beat Cuba at the Ncaa Junior Championships.
Yeah.
That was the first junior team. It had Nick Hogue, it had TJ Sanders, Lucas Van Berkel. They ended up playing the Americans in the final. And that American team had like Taylor Sanda or Micah Christensen, Taylor Crabb, actually, back when he was playing indoor. Yep. Maurice Torres was the right side. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time. And the way we did it was by playing a game where any tough situation, we would just stay down and take their setter out of the situation, make them push to a high ball offense, and then we would trap them.
Yep.
And the way that Glenn Hogue started coaching the technique of the game and how Canadian volleyball is thought about, and I think that we've really defined our own type of game that is kind of a meld between the physical style of the Americans and the more thought, strategic style of the French. And we've really started to change that. And there's been a trickle down effect, not only with the national team, but also through the university system and
on down
the club
from that.
system.
Yeah. That is fascinating. The style of volleyball thing is a great point that you bring up, because the big name national teams in the world, you can describe their particular style of game. Russia, huge, gigantic, strong, physical, hit the ball as hard as you can, block 10 balls a match. Brazil, fast, precise, like beautiful to the eye, control the ball, run a ridiculously fast offense, set the middle from 700 feet away, like crazy stuff like that. And yeah, so if Glenn Hogue gets the credit for developing Canadian style of volleyball, then that's a tremendously huge deal and a big step towards being like internationally competitive. So that is really cool to hear from the inside.
Yeah, and I mean there's other factors too, because not only we had the system, but the athletes that we started to get into the program too.
That always helps.
Yeah, having guys like, I think Gord Perrin was of this group was really one of the first guys who's just like, hey, that dude plays at another level. He plays at an international level, and we've had there's been a huge influx too. And I mean, I'm still pretty young. I'm only 28, so I was playing my 18U, my 18U year of club only 10 years ago. But looking at the way club is and the way like how seriously it's taken now, especially boys volleyball, girls volleyball too, but it was always, more, I think that's the way it is in most places, where girls volleyball is taken a little bit more seriously than the boys.
Definitely the case in the US, that's for sure.
Yeah. But look back to my 18U year, dude, we had 8 teams in our tier 1 division here in Ontario. Now that extends, I think it's almost up to 30. Right. So, wow. Yeah. And I think that's another thing too, that I'm from Ontario. Ontario is our biggest province. It holds Toronto, and, it's our most populous province by far. And before 2008, it was really beat up on. Basically, before 2008, Ontario had only won 4 18U boys national championships. And since then,
who was winning them?
Alberta, Manitoba, and BC, even Saskatchewan,
wow.
All the other provinces. Mm-hmm. But Ontario was, very hockey centric and very football and very basketball. Like there was everything else. And maybe, let's say, where the country's a little bit whiter, there's more attuned to play a little bit more volleyball. But the difference in volleyball now in Ontario compared to 10 years ago is hugely different. I mean, just look at guys like Shawan, Vernon Evans, yep. and Dane Ncaa and Tariq Sani, and even Irvin Brar, who's a guy of Indian descent from Vancouver. Volleyball, especially in Ontario, has started to become very, very multicultural, and because of that, it's got a new swagger to it, and kids enjoy playing it, and it's not as kind of old and stuffy as it was when I played.
Dude, there's so much to be said for that. There, one really big piece of news that came out of the NCAA, I guess, within the last year is so there's a foundation called First Point Volleyball that
First Point with the ACLU schools. I think
exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah, so the
massive
historically black colleges and universities, whatever conference that is, SEAC maybe, mm-hmm. whatever the conference is called, added like 7 or 8 men's volleyball programs at NCAA Division II, which is stellar. It's just great news. And yeah, so maybe we won't be too far behind in adding some much needed like kind of jolt of diversity and energy at the same time into the game at the collegiate level, and especially where the possibility is very real that we lose Stanford's program, which is a heartbreaking development.
Brutal. Brutal.
Just the worst. Yeah. So adding a whole new conference is one way to soften that blow just a little bit. So that's really nice news. All right.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. That was a lot of great info about Canada. Before I want to talk about like professional volleyball in North American markets and how that might potentially look like. And I talked to Dan Menely on the episode earlier today that will probably be out by the time people are listening to this, about this same thing. He has a lot of thoughts now that he's been in Europe for a while. But before we do that, I want to ask you the same question I asked him. And that was, if you could name a starting 7 of any 7 players in the world, you know, the standard breakdown of positions, to make the best all-star team of 7 players right now in the men's game, who's your starting 7? It's funny. Dan knew his answer and recited it in like 5 seconds.
Dan loves playing this game. Like,
he does. He plays this game a lot.
Dan loves that ESPN style of being like, okay, who's the GOAT? Like, who are we talking about? But for me, man, okay, I'm going to have to say, in terms of setters, and I'm going to preface this that I'm going to purposefully shy away from Canadians because my gut reaction is to pick Canadians. And I'm just a homer. I'm just a homer at that. I feel like
there's nothing wrong with that.
I feel, and I like being proud of that too, because I actually I make fun of it, but I love American bravado. Up to a certain extent. I think there's a certain point where it gets a little too much, but I love American bravado and that feeling of we're the best and we're always the best. And I think Canada needs to have a little bit more of that. So I love being that person of like, kind of like, you know, shouting it from the mountaintop that like our guys are the best guys in my views. So, but I'm going to purposely shy away from that.
Okay.
I think I'm going to go for if I want a quarterback, like I want Micah dishing my butter.
Good answer.
And I think I'm going to stick with Modern as like, I'm going to stick with that team of him and Grabenikov.
Okay.
Yeah, because the things that Ncaa does is just disgusting. It's ridiculous.
That is a no-brainer. I would have kicked you off this show if you hadn't answered Ncaa Grabenikov.
Yeah, 100%. And I think but the reality is that I really, really want to say Blair Band.
Blair Band's top 5.
And I 100% think he's one of the best, but Ncaa just has a flair about him, you know? So yeah, I'd go Micah and Ncaa. On the right.
Right's a tough one.
It is tough. I mean, the obvious piece right now is Maher. Just the way he's been playing this season has been absolutely unreal. I do have to watch how Lagungia and Monza plays. Like the way he played this week against Milano was insane, and he's like a really young Turkish guy.
Yep.
But yeah, I think for right now, I'm going to go with Maher. And just that idea too of Christensen and Grabenikov and Maher, it's pretty sexy.
That would be pretty sick.
I like that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
All right. How about middles?
Middles. You know what? I'm gonna go with Kolkanowski. I love the way that Kolkanowski plays. He's a smaller guy, but he closes really well, and he plays in that like foot and a half range, like right above the net, really, really well. You know, and I think that a lot of guys who are good at playing above that, like they get caught underneath a lot, but his hands are really active. He's always on time. I love watching Kolkanowski play.
That is a great dark horse choice. I would not have picked that myself, but I really like that pick.
You know, as a guy who was a smaller middle, like in HNU, I played like a little bit of everything.
So was I.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a lot of respect for the guys that just do their job really, really well and aren't just like big like hanger and bangers.
There's the one 6'3" Iranian guy too that plays middle somehow and like survives. I forgot his name, but yeah, I have a lot of respect for those guys.
100%. And then so I'm gonna go with Kolkanowski, and then I'm gonna go with Canadian here. I'm gonna go with Arthur Schwartz as my M2.
Dude, he's the Arthur Schwartz opposite story this year.
Man, he's watching him on the opposite has been a lot of fun. But I like Arthur for a lot of reasons. First of all, I coached his younger sister in club for a year. And, that was pretty cool. She hadn't really played volleyball before, but she was a really good athlete. You could tell, that like it's in the genes. But just watching his progression over the past few years has been phenomenal. And I mean, I don't like the first time I ever met him, I'm standing on the subway platform in Toronto and I look over and there's this massive dude who's wearing like a full Team Ontario tracksuit. And I'm like, I am who I am and I know everyone. And I like go up to him and I'm like, dude, who are you? Because I know everyone. I don't
know who you are. I've had that exact same reaction to people before.
Yeah. And so like he told me, and then just, that year he made the junior national team, and just watching him progress and having all this success recently has been a lot of fun. But like, you can't deny that physically he's up there with some of the best middles in the world.
He's got all the tools, no question.
Yeah. All of the physical tools. He serves well. He blocks well. He's an offensive weapon. The way that they run him on that 31 slide is so much fun. And I love watching him and TJ and him and Jay run it too. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the homer there, and I'm going to go with Arthur and Kokonowski.
I like that pick.
In the middle.
All right, 2 left sides. One of them is probably pretty easy. The other one is a lot tougher.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't pick out Leon, you're pretty screwed, to be honest.
Yep.
I mean, the dude is LeBron James of volleyball.
Yes, he is.
He does
27.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's 27 years old. He does ridiculous things, and yeah, you would be absolutely insane not to want to pick him on your team. It would be a shame, really. It really would.
Correct.
As for his guy, like,
there's a bunch of ways you could go about picking a second outside. You could do like another big banger. You could do a super small ball control-y guy. You could do like a kind of older veteran glue sort of guy. There's a lot of play styles at the outside hitter spot.
Right, and that's what, and am I going for pure all-star team, or because like I'm a coach at heart, so, or am I going for the glue guy, the chemistry guy, like who's going to pass the ball? Who's going to pass the ball here?
Your call. Let's say the 7 guys are actually playing together, and like team cohesion and chemistry is a thing that you need. You can pick a guy based on that if you want.
Oh man!
But figure it out. There's more I want to get to.
It has to be current though, eh? Like I can't say Jiva.
Nope, right now. Jiva's a great pick. It's got to be right now.
You know what? I'll probably go with Kubiak.
That is a great pick.
I think he's a guy that's going to solidify the service. If he's going to work hard on defense, he's going to be a veteran guy who's going to be able to kind of like work with all the different guys. So yeah, I think I'm going to go to Kubiak. But really want to go for Maher though. Like Maher is like, I really want to pick Stephen Maher, especially for the way he's been playing in the Super League this year. I really want to pick Stephen Maher, but yeah, no, I'm gonna pick Kubiak.
Okay, all right. Dan's choices for reference, by the way, were Micah, Ncaa, Nimir, Leon, all the same as yours. He picked Robert Landy Simone and Srećko Lisinac in the middle, and then his L2 was Irvin Ingapeth. So all really good choices. Kubiak is a great pick too. So I was excited to see the Venn diagram.
It would have been a good pick too. For some reason I blanked on him, but yeah, I'm going to stick with Kubiak just because I'm not sure if Ingapeth and Leon's egos can both be on the same team.
Very possible that wouldn't work.
Right. I don't know who who's not getting the ball between Nimir and Leon and Ingapeth. Like I think Kubiak's just kind of just like, yeah, I think Kubiak's just kind of like, okay, let me pass the ball, but I'm not so sure about Irvin.
Okay, I like that take. All right, let's move on. I want to. I've already learned a lot talking to you about how the Canadian volleyball universe works, how the youth level kind of is, how it's split between different provinces, how youth sports works, the growth of the national team. Let's try to fill me in general across all of like Canadian volleyball culture. Maybe just the men's side. How does Canada consume volleyball? What are the ways that Canada goes after and pursues and then consumes volleyball content? Do you think it's similar to how we do it in the U.S.? Is it different? I don't really know, honestly. One point that Dan made that I think is true is that per capita, I think more people in Canada care about men's volleyball than in the U.S.
I would definitely agree with that. I think, but the fact that, if correct me if I'm wrong, but US isn't offered, or volleyball isn't offered as a sport in every state in the US.
At the high
Whereas
school level, you're right. That is
yeah,
not all of them have it.
whereas
Actually, less than half
that
do.
wow, so that's definitely not the case here in Canada. And I can truly say that, every other than Newfoundland now that doesn't have a men's program, since mine folded a couple of years ago, like every province has um, both university and college programs. And I mean, ours is worked out. Our schooling system is a little bit different. At university is our and Div 1, and college is more of our D3.
Right.
So it's the CCAA and U Sports. And as I mentioned before, academics is a big factor. Like if you don't have the grades to go to university, then you go to U Sports. Or to the CCAA. Then it's kind of like a junior college situation. Yeah, exactly.
So how about the national team? Like, what do people crave about Team Canada? Is it all about going to games? Is it all about watching them on TV? Is it all about following social media?
Oh man, no, it's tough. And I mean, like, it's been better the past few years, a little bit since some games started being online for CBC. But like, that's basically what I've done for the past 10 years, and it's hard to get Canadians to care about volleyball. And I find a lot of the time too, it's hard enough to convince volleyball people to care about volleyball.
Dude, it is. I've never understood that.
Dude, it's the most frustrating thing. And I really think it's because we just don't do a good job at telling stories. There's a few reasons. I think, we don't do a really good job at telling stories within volleyball. Like, we don't do a good job at creating a storyline and talking about our players. Like, it's so hard just to find the game and watch the game, that the expectation that, like, and I've seen it from Volleyball Canada for years, is that the expectation that the volleyball community is just going to show up. Like, we're not going to tell them, we're not going to market to them, we're not going to go out and get them. They're just going to show up.
Because they know, they're supposed to know it's happening. They're supposed to be there.
They're supposed to know, and it's just not the case. So I think, like, a lot of what I do and a lot of what I try to do through Volleyball Source is just try to create those avenues for people to watch the game, because it's so difficult sometimes I think we're about the same age.
Yeah, growing I'm 26.
Up, you couldn't watch. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm a little bit older. I'm 28, but growing up, we couldn't watch the game. You couldn't watch matches. Like, live streaming wasn't really a thing yet. And I remember, like, university games, even once in a while, like, the national championships were on TV. And I mean, in those ways, we've regressed because it doesn't happen like that anymore, and it's all online. But now you can find everything you want online. So that's exactly what I've tried to do through Volleyball Source. And why I do what I do is just I try to link up as many people with the live streams that are out there, and give them more opportunities to watch the game and follow the game, and start talking about the game, like, the ways that we talk about other sports, like the ways that we talk about the NBA and we talk about the NFL and stuff like that. And, today on our Discord server, also just a general out there to any one of your fans, if you guys want to join our Discord server, you can I can help him out.
It's linked on. So first of all, I have to give Everett all the credit in the world, because if you guys don't know about Volleyball Source or haven't been to the website or follow him on Instagram, you are seriously missing out. Even if you're not Canadian, even if you're American, it is a must follow, because if you are trying to consume volleyball right now, if you want to watch live streams from overseas, any of your favorite players that are playing, he posts every link that you could possibly find and exactly how to access it. It's an amazing service that you do, and I wouldn't know half of the places to watch matches if it weren't for your site. If you want to join the Discord and like chat randomly with a bunch of us volleyball nerds while you watch matches, that link is on the site as well. And we just did it today. It was a blast, just like chatting about the matches that we were all watching with people all over the world who really know the game. So that is super dope.
Exactly.
And I highly recommend that. So you made a point. You made a point about, and Dan made the exact same point, that we don't do that good of a job telling storylines when we broadcast volleyball or whatever. However we produce volleyball content, we don't usually do that good of a job of creating storylines. And Dan said the exact same thing, and he has a really good point. And that's something that I try to do when I'm commentating, at least to some degree. But this kind of leads into my next question, and this is kind of a big question. Knowing how like the North American sports landscape is, it's massive, it's dense, there's a lot going on. It's difficult to break into a market like that because people already have so much sports that they watch, whether they want to or need to or don't want to or whatever. What is something maybe from each of the big four North American sports that a league like the VLA could take and apply to volleyball to maybe push it forward, get it in front of more people? If there's a thing that comes to mind about any of the big pro leagues right now that they do really, really well, could a volleyball league like steal inspiration from that and use it to get it in front of people?
Fair enough. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint specific things from like specific big four sports that they do generally differently. But, you know, I think one of the big things for me right now is figuring out the different ways that people consume sports. Mm-hmm. And I think for so long, we've had this notion of it's only consumed at like game time, you know? And you know, like the people either want to watch it live or they don't want to watch it at all. And I think that notion is completely wrong and it's bad. I think that if you look at the NBA and the way that they've allowed like shorter cut versions of their matches to go up on YouTube almost immediately is a huge thing where, you know, if I miss the Raptors game, I can just go on like Pietro something, whatever that YouTube channel is, and I can catch all of the highlights in a condensed version.
Yes.
And, you know, and I think that's one thing for me that I notice for myself as a consumer of media, it doesn't matter if it's sports or not, is that sometimes I'm scouring YouTube and I'm looking for something in a genre, but I'm also looking for like I'm making dinner right now and I have 20 minutes to kill. I want something to watch in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to go watch BYU versus Hawaii for 2.5 hours on YouTube, but I can throw up, like if there's a shortened version of it where it's just the highlights, I can watch that, right? And, you know, being able to provide those other opportunities and ways for people to follow the sport are so huge. And I think, you know, the other side of the storytelling, I think even just like a weekend wrap up, you know, just like you would turn on ESPN in the morning, we can have a recap of what's going on throughout the day, then that's the biggest thing. That those are, you know, recap videos are some of the most success I've had working at different events, especially in the States too.
Those are two great points. And that the first one you said, like a condensed highlight video sort of format, is a content idea that I kind of took from videos that you used to make. And I chopped up, I think I've done 3 of them. I really need to get to the rest. But the event that the VLA played back in July, I made some highlight videos of that exact nature, where I took out all the breaks in between points and then all the service errors. And I just gave you point, action. There may be half an hour or 20 minutes or half an hour, depending on how long the match was. Those I think are great, and not nearly enough people have watched those videos. So if you're listening to this and you think that format is cool, go check out our YouTube channel. But the wrap-up show one is a great idea, and that's something that I plan on doing after each weekend of the VLA season that we do in January, starting in January, which, by the way, many more details will be coming out pretty soon. Yeah. The wrap-up show is a great idea. It really is.
I think that's essential, and the reality is, and you know, I've talked about this before in the context of female sports, especially like, you know, we're having that conversation of why can't we follow female sports a lot more. And in Canada, a couple of years ago, we had the NWHL, or the Canadian Women's Hockey League, kind of fold, and that was our pro women's hockey league. And you had all of these chads who were out there being like, well, all the games were streamed on this website, no one watched them, and there was games on Sportsnet. Well, like the times when there was games online or on TV was like during the Super Bowl or during, you know, the World Juniors, like during other big events, and people aren't going to be watching. That
you can't possibly compete with,
event. Yeah. But at the same time, if all of these events are going on and these games are happening, but you're not talking about them in the morning 30, you know, the morning sports show, that's something that it's like here in Canada, we kill so much time with like in that 30-minute segment, like the 30-minute sport loop, we kill so much time with like dumb stuff that no one really cares about. Why can't we throw in volleyball? Why can't we throw in, you know, like women's soccer or women's hockey or whatever it may be? So you're always going to, as a sports fan, there's going to be more people who are going to be watching that morning recap than there is ever going to be watching the live game the night before. So I would almost argue that the way you recap the weekend and the way you tell the story of the weekend after it's all said and done is almost more important than how you do it throughout. Right?
That is very well said.
Like no one, like honestly, and I mean, I'm coming from this as like a commentator myself, but like I used to always put so much stock into my commentary and then just kind of be at the end of the weekend, just be like so dead and tired, be like, oh, well, like they could have listened to me on the broadcast. But the reality is that way more people are going to follow your wrap up, and then more people are going to be interested for the weeks to come about like what's next.
Well said. That is a huge piece of advice that we are going to take and run with this year, I promise.
And then one more thing is you need a baseline view. Just have a baseline view. This BS of watching volleyball from the side is so frustrating.
It's outdated,
and like
man.
even my girlfriend who knows nothing about sports, she's a dancer. Like she knows nothing about sports. So she watches games with me, and even her is like, I can't stand watching it when there's a camera on the side and you're trying to follow the ball. We're the only net sport that does a side camera angle. Right? You wouldn't watch baseball from the side, right? Nope. You wouldn't watch a pitch from the side. You won't watch tennis from the side. Why do we watch volleyball from the side? It's the most frustrating thing in the world.
You nailed it.
And it's so easy. Just stick one camera up in the back. It doesn't like even that like one of the reasons why some of my videos used to do so good is that ground level view in volleyball is so underrated.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Because volleyball is the only sport that plays in that area between like the 0 feet to 12 feet range, right? That's where the game's played because we're not scoring on either ends of the court. We're scoring downwards. So having that visual recognition and not just being like a flat playing field when you're visually seeing it is huge, right? Like it's so many times, like I see better volleyball content from people sitting courtside, like filming with their phones
than the actual broadcast. Yep.
With broadcast.
Yep. Absolutely. You nailed it. And I couldn't agree more. The one we did in July was exclusively baseline camera. I insist upon that view. You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It really,
Thank you.
Again, that is an inspiration from you in the videos you used to make, because you're right. That view sitting at about 6 feet right on the baseline is the coolest way to perceive the speed and the size and the athleticism of the game. Now, you have to sacrifice a little bit. You have to go up a little bit higher so you can see the far side of the net. That's the only reason I don't run it from 4 feet all the time is because you have to see the other side of the net. But I am a ride or die baseline cam guy, so you can expect all baseline cams from VLA broadcasts. You're welcome. Great point, though. So before we get you out of here, this has been so awesome, by the way. Before I get you out of here, I have been asked to make you tell a story about Bartosz Kurek in the World League 2012-ish. I don't know anything about this story, but I've been told to make you tell it on the show. So let's hear whatever your Bartosz Kurek story is.
Well, basically, go back to 2012. I'm working for Volleyball Canada full time at the time, and this is just subsequent to us qualifying for World League. Mm-hmm. And it's our first World League ever, and we're hosting it in Canada, and we're actually hosting it in conjunction with the national championship. So it's all in one big building in Toronto.
The US did that in 2012 as well. It was in Dallas. I was there. It was a great idea. Strongly recommend.
Yeah. So our World League weekend that weekend was Canada, Brazil, Poland, and Finland. So it was a
woof. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And my job is, I'm basically the intern, so I'm doing everything. Like we beat Brazil in that tournament, and I spent the fourth set going to get Subway sandwiches for our volunteers. But basically, like, we're setting up the court and stuff like that, and I'm told, like, hey, Everett, you need to go drive someone. And I was like, just like a driver. I was 20 years old at the time. And I'm like, yep. So I go back to the hotel, drop my stuff off, and they like go down to the lobby. There's a Polish player that needs to go to the hospital for some checkups. And I show up, and it's Bartosz Kurek. And of course, like, Bartosz Kurek is a dude, like this is young Bartosz Kurek. I think he's just coming off of his season at Moscow and stuff like that. And I think it's Bartosz Kurek, Gardini is there, and a couple of other Polish coaches, and a Canadian Polish coach by the name of Maher. And so I drive them to Mount Sinai Hospital, and I basically just spent the next, I think it was 3-4 hours hanging out with Bartosz Kurek
Whoa.
at the hospital. And that was pretty surreal for me. And was definitely up there with experiences. And it's, there's other coaches and stuff there too. So there was a good part of the conversation that was in Polish. And, I'm not understanding a word of that, but he was pretty, we talked about how it was mind-boggling to him how volleyball just wasn't the same here. And, how big it was. And, I remember him showing, and I remember him showing me pictures of his car on his phone and stuff like that. And he was actually pretty nice to me. And afterwards he gave me, I wonder if I have it here. I may do, but I actually have a Polish national team. I have Paweł Zagumi's, who's one of their old setters.
I remember him.
Yeah, I have his Polish national team shirt from that. So yeah, that was a pretty cool moment where, I just got to hang out with Bartosz Kurek for a little bit. And yeah, it was dope. It was really cool how, he didn't just didn't just kind of disregard me on the side and, chatted with me for a little bit.
That is an awesome story. Dude, man, the cool places that volleyball can take you, huh? How about that?
Dude, I've and that's the thing is that I've throughout the years, I've really the people I've met through volleyball has been incredible.
It's bananas.
Yeah, it really is. And, and that's why I have so much love for American volleyball, because I've gone to so many American events in the States, and the American volleyball community has always been so welcoming to me. And, even for me, part of the, before any of this started, I was inspired by the Net Live, and
Kevin Barnett's show.
And, that was back when it was Dan Madden and Geeter and Kevin Barnett and DJ, that was what inspired me to kind of do everything and be where, come to where I am today. And, it's been so much fun. And that's the thing is for me over the past 10 years of doing this now, which is crazy to think of. It's been so much fun to watch and meet all of these people and just see all of the different experiences and perspectives across the sport.
The volleyball community is dope, man. It's one of the things I love about working with this league so much. Every event that we get to run is just a blast. It's people I just love to see who really care about each other and care about the game. It's awesome. I remember, so when I was in college, I went to Purdue in the middle of Indiana, and I got a text one day from an unknown number when my sophomore year of college. And the text said, "Hey, this is Loy Ball. I'm wondering if you want to bring your Purdue club team up to my tournament in Fort Wayne." The first year, one of the first years they were in the Loy Ball class. I'm like, "Wait, excuse me, this is who? Who are you talking about?" And fast forward 6 years later, and I'm working on this league that Loy Ball founded. He's been on my show. He's a guy that I could text with any random question if I wanted to. That is ridiculous to me. That's unbelievable. So that I love hearing stories like that. Everyone's got one. That's part of what makes volleyball so cool, man. Just love it.
Yeah, it's I've worked with some of the biggest names in the sport, Carrie and whatnot, and they've always been so gracious and so nice to me. So it's always a blast, and that's kind of what I do, and just try to promote the sport in any way we can.
Yep. Well, you deserve all the credit in the world, man. Like I said, if anybody is not already following Volleyball Source, you're nuts. Go follow him. Check out his website. If you ever want to watch European volleyball or any volleyball at all, even if you're not Canadian, it is a must follow. And I'm hoping that we can grab some of your fans to follow the VLA as well. So if you're new to the show, follow us at VLA Volleyball on Instagram. If you like the idea of professional men's volleyball in North America somewhere, you're going to want to watch our stuff. Seriously, high-level dudes, names that you will recognize. Volleyball.
When's that going down again? Is that going down in January again?
Yep, so January 18th-ish, whatever weekend that is the kickoff of the season 2021. There will be a lot more details coming out soon. There's a lot that still needs to be worked out with the pandemic and everything. If you're starving for volleyball until then, we've got a YouTube channel. All the matches that we played in the summer are up there. So there's a lot to check out. Everett, thank you so much, man, for hopping on the show.
No problem, dude. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. It's fun to chat volleyball with someone like you who's built a media presence, a North American under 30 volleyball guy is pretty uncommon, like Dan and I were talking about last episode. So I'm sure we'll be chatting about volley real soon, my friend. So
we'll have to do one with the three of us, and we'll just go off for a little bit.
That would be wild.
Yeah,
I think we should do like a live stream of that where we just kind of chill and like watch a match or read comments and whatever. That would be a blast. I would love that.
I was thinking about kind of doing like hangouts like that on Twitch.
Yeah, all for it.
So yeah, let's talk about it. Awesome.
You got it, dude.
Thanks, Rob.
All right,
appreciate it, dude.
Thanks everyone for watching. We will see y'all next time.